Mr. Sony, you must listen very carefully. It's an inquest, and
at the end of the inquest, I'm going to make certain findings.
at the end of the inquest, I'm going to make certain findings.
En een van daardie bevindings is te doen met die oorzaak van die dood. Je verstaan. En als ik tot die gevolgtrekking kom dat er mensen is wat betrokken is in die oorzaak van die dood, ik moet die namen van die mensen in mijn bevindings bijvoegen. Je verstaan. Nou, dit is iets wat ik van vooraf voor u moet gezegd, maar ik heb geen kennis gedragen van uw getuigenis. Want u het niet getuigd voor die eerste doodsonderzoek. Nee? Is ik recht? Die eerste doodsonderzoek in 1972, u het niet getuigd daar. Is ik recht?
Ja.
Want ik heb niet op beëdigde verklaring gezien en al die...
Ik was niet betrokken daarbij nie.
Ja. Nou, die twee collega's van jou wat hier al voorheen getuigd het, meneer Rodriguez en meneer Nel. Ik heb hulle ook voor, meneer Els, is het Els, sorry. Ik heb ook voor hulle gezegd dat als ik nou tot die gevolgtrekking kom, dat meneer Timol is dood als gevolg van die gedrag van zekere leden van die veiligheidsstaat. Ik ga namen noemen. Verstaan nou u? Gevolglijk, u draagt nou die risico. Want u was het leden van die veiligheidsstaat. En u zijn getuigenis. U zei dat op het stadium u het kapitein Durker vergezeld naar meneer Timol's huis toe. Is het correct? Ja. Nou, ik verwacht van u om ons die waarheid te zeggen. Verstaan je het?
Ja, ja.
Want als je ons niet die waarheid zegt, nie, die mogelijkheid bestaan dat u draagt risico en hij kan aanbevelen in die bevinding dat u betrokken was. In die dood van meneer Timol. Dat is die risico. So u moet voorzichtig wees met uw weergave. Verstaan je? Zeker jouw procureur heeft dit voor jou gezegd. Nee? Het jouw procureur dit voor jou gezegd?
Nee.
Hij het niet. Nou verstaan je wat ik zei? Nou?
Nee, ik verstaan niet.
Ja, van nou af, als je u nou getuigt, u moet dit in die gedachten horen. Verstaan je?
Correct.
Ja. Mr. Pretoria, as you may proceed.
Thank you, my lord. Thank you. Meneer Sons, kom ons begin net weer. Wie het jou gewerk vir die veiligheidsstaat? Is dit Roy Swanepoel? Kom ek vra jou direk.
Kan ek net daai vraag weer kry?
Wie het jou gewerk vir die veiligheidsstaat? Is dit Roy Swanepoel?
Swanepoel, ja. Yes, it is Swanepoel. Roy Rus.
Weet jy, hoekom het hy gewerk vir die veiligheidsstaat?
Ek sou aanneem eerder dat hy my gesien het as 'n goeie kandidaat.
I think that he saw me to be a good candidate.
Jy het getuig dat jy gesien het dat hoenders opgehang is op die stoep van die ouerhuis van Ahmed Timol. Nie waar nie.
Kan ek net die vraag weer kry?
Jy het gesien dat hoenders opgehang is op die stoep, die ouerhuis van Ahmed Timol, nie waar nie.
Dis korrek.
You testified that you saw chickens hanged on the stoop of the parents' house.
So jy moes tot by die stoep gegaan het om dit te kon sien.
Nee, eerder.
And that means you should have gone to the stoop to be able to see those chickens.
Wat het julle gesoek by die ouer huis?
Dirker het blijkbaar gaan kyk daarso vir tikmachine en dinge soos daai.
Yeah, the reason for us to have gone there, Dirkers went there to go and look for a typing machine.
Het hy die tikmasjien gekry en saam teruggevat kantoor toe?
Ek sou so sê eerlik.
I will say that he found it and took it to the office.
Hoekom onthou hierdie hoenders wat op die stoep opgehang is? Wat is die belang daarvan?
Eerlik, dit het my 'n nare gevoel gegee. Die hoenders was geskil, dit hang daar so bebloed, eerlik. En vir my het dit net 'n nare gevoel gegee.
Yeah, for me to have been able to have seen these chickens, they were full of blood and what no?
The skin was peeled off.
The skins of the chickens were spilled off.
Ek wil net die foto wat ek aan u getoon het afrond. Het u self op hierdie foto herken, my lord, I've got the necessary copies. I would ask that this be accepted as Exhibit S at the present moment. There's some other statements that will be Q, but if we can accept this as Exhibit S, my lord. That's the door. Op hierdie bewysstuk het u self erken, nie waar nie?
Just a minute, Mr. Sodas. You have a copy of this? Accepted as exhibit.
No,
S.
it's here.
This is the same one.
Okay.
Het u self herken op hierdie foto?
Dis korrek eerlik.
That is correct, my lord.
Het ook ander lede van die veiligheidsstaf, nie almal nie, maar ander lede van die veiligheidsstaf daarop herken, nie waar nie?
Ja, eerlik.
And some of the members of the security branch, you were able to identify them.
Is hierdie foto nie miskien by Brixton geneem nie? Kan jy onthou waar hierdie foto geneem is?
Can you remember where that photo was taken?
Nee, eerlik.
I cannot recall where this photo was taken.
Maar van wie is foto, van watter afdeling is hierdie persone? Wat 'n foto is hierdie?
From which division is that photo?
Eerlik, tussen hierdie mense hierso sien ek veiligheidstaklede eerlik.
Or from some of the people that are appearing on this photo, they are from the security branch.
Daar is sommige van hulle wat so ver kom van Benoni se wêreld af.
And some of them were coming from Benoni world.
Ek wil teruggaan na die oproer wat u gesien het en presies vasstel waar is dit presies waar u hierdie samedromming van mense gesien het.
Just before you leave the photograph.
As the court pleases,
Yes,
my lord.
I've just received it now, and I'm not sure. All of them look very young here. I'm not sure who is he and where is he appearing.
Kan u net vir ons 'n aanduiding gee waar op die foto verskyn u? Miskien na aanleiding van wie 'n ligte pak aan het in die voorste gedeeltes. Kan u vir ons aandui waar sit u op hierdie foto?
Wil u nou weet u edele of hierdie mense by in 'n uitgang uitgekom het?
Ekskuus meneer Sons, ons wil net die foto klaarmaak voor ons na die uitgang gaan. Op hierdie foto, waar op hierdie foto verskyn u? As dit u moontlik kan help, wat se kleur pak het u aan?
Ek is reg voor, amper in die middel, u edele.
Just sitting in the front, sit and in the middle.
3, 4, the 5th person.
Die vyfde.
Ja,
So as van die linkerkant soontoe.
ja.
Yeah. From the left side of the photo to the 5th, and that is the witness.
U het 'n ligte pak aan, nie waar nie?
Dit is so, u edele.
You wearing a light suit?
Can I move on, my
Yes,
lord?
yes, meneer.
Ek wil graag die samendromming van die mense wat u gesien het verstaan. U sê dit's aan die weste kant van John Foster Plain nie waar. Hoor ek verstaan u die vraag?
Edele, as die vraag is of daar 'n geweldige samendromming is, dan is die antwoord nee. Maar daar was 'n handjievol mense wat uitgekom het daar by die huisbak uit. Daar's 2 huisbakke daar so, edele. En uit daai huisbak uit het die mense uitgekom terwyl ek inbeweeg het.
Yeah, there are 2 lifts, and there's this a handful of people that came out of those 2 lifts, and I was getting inside one of those lifts.
En u het dit beskryf as 'n oproer. Was dit
Edele?
'n oproer?
Oproer.
Huh?
Alles sê, u het dit beskryf as 'n oproer.
Nee, dit is nie 'n oproer nie, edele.
Ja, wat was dit?
Dit is ook nie 'n samendromming nie.
Ja.
Dit is 'n handjievol mense wat uit die huisbak uitkom en uitbeweeg. Terwyl ons wil ingaan, edele.
Yeah, it's a handful of people that got out of this lifts, and once we were getting into the lifts,
Weet u waar die Dollars motorhawe is? Weet u van die motorhawe daar by John Foster Plain? Weet u aan watter kant van die gebou? Die
Dit is aan die
motorhawe.
suidekant, edele, reg oor kan die pad.
yeah, the garage is on the southern side of the road, of the building. It's a correct.
En daar was nie 'n samekoms van 'n handjievol mense of enigiets daar aan daardie kant van die gebou nie.
Edele, ek was glad en geheel nie naby daai plek nie.
I wasn't,
As daar mense was wat daar saamgedrom het, weet ek niks daarvan nie. Ek was net nie daar nie.
I wasn't there. I wasn't part of the people that were getting out of the lifts.
Dit was nou net 'n handjievol mense by die huisbak wat uitgekom het en hulle het gesê iemand het uit die venster uitgespring.
Dis korrek, edele.
Yeah, those handful people, they said that somebody flew out of or dived through the window.
Was hulle doodnormaal? Was hulle opgewonde? Of net 'n normale opmerking wat hulle gemaak het?
Dis moeilik vir my om te sê, edele.
It's difficult for me to say whether they were angry or in what state of mind were they.
En hulle het ook net gesê iemand het uit die venster uitgespring.
Dis korrek, edele.
And they only said that somebody went out through the window.
Dis dit al wat hulle gesê het.
Dit is so, edele.
Is it all what they said? Yes.
Hulle het nie gespesifiseer wanneer hy uitgespring het of hy in die oggend uitgespring het of wanneer hy uitgespring het. Net gesê hy het uit die venster uitgespring.
Nee, edele.
They did not specify as to when did he dive out of that window, whether it was in the morning or what time was it.
Die nee wat jy nou antwoord, wat bedoel jy daarmee?
Ek vra my, het hulle gespesifiseer.
You asking me that, did they specify what time did he dive?
En hulle het nie gespesifiseer.
Nee, edele.
No, they did not specify.
So dis moontlik dat die persoon al in die oggend daar kon uitgespring het.
So is it possible that this person could have dived out of this window in the morning?
Ek kan nie sê nie, edele.
I can say,
Ek wil teruggaan na die snaakse goed, die dirty tricks toe. Buiten bande afblaas, wat is nog gedoen?
Ja, goed.
Ek vra weer vir u. Ek wil teruggaan na die snaakse goed wat u gesê het Paul Erasmus gedoen het, die dirty tricks. Hy het vir ons een voorbeeld gegee van bande wat afgeblaas is by 'n vergadering. Wat is nog gedoen?
Om dit te spesifiseer, moet ek teruggaan na die geskiedenis.
Dis wat
En ek
nie
het
vra.
nie daai inligting nie, eerlik.
For me to be able to answer the question put to me by the state, I must go back to the history, and I do not have that information.
Het jy Bouwer geken, Robbie Bouwer?
Ja, eerlik.
Did you know Bowie? Wie?
Hy het ook daar by die veiligheidsdag gewerk, nie waar nie?
Dit is so, eerlik.
That is indeed so.
Hy was betrokke by die ondervraging van Ahmed Timol, nie waar nie?
Ek weet nie, eerlik.
I don't know whether he was one of the people that were interrogating him.
Nou reeds gesien, jy het Roy Swanepoel geken, het jy vir Hans Gloy geken, kaptein Gloy?
Ja, ek het hom geken, eerlik.
Yes, I did know Captain Floyd.
En Van Niekerk, kaptein Van Niekerk?
Ek dink daar was meer as een van die kerk. Ek het een van die kerks geken, eerlik. Dit is Tiny van die kerk.
En
There
Pittou?
was more than one of the surname of Van Niekerk. And what is the name? Van
Tiny
Teen. Teen Van
van
Niekerk.
die kerk.
Het jy 'n Pittou geken?
Ja, ek het hom geken.
Yeah, I did know him.
Hy het ook gewerk by die veiligheidsdag.
Ja, hy was betrokke by president Mandela se arrestasie daar in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah, he was responsible for the arrest of Mr. Mandela in KwaZulu-Natal.
Het Baby onder jou gewerk? Het Babu onder jou? Surendra Babu, Baby, het hy onder jou gewerk?
Eerlik, dit was seker van 'n korte duur. Ek kan hom nie so mooi onthou nie, maar ek weet Babu, Surendra Babu, is 'n bekende naam.
Yeah, he worked with me or under me for just a short period of time, but this name, Baru or Baby, it does go into my mind.
Jy het getuienis gegee dat jy nou 80 jaar oud is, nie waar nie?
Ekskuus?
80 jaar oud.
Jy het getuienis gegee dat jy nou 80 jaar oud is, nie
My
waar?
ouderdom is 80,
Yes, I am 80 years of age.
80 years.
80 years.
Maar u is die direkteur van 'n aantal maatskappye, nie waar nie?
Ekskuus?
U is die direkteur van 'n aantal maatskappye, nie waar nie?
Nie weer nie, eerlik.
I'm no longer a director of.
Kom ons gaan net vinnig deur die maatskappye wat aan u behoort het of waarvan u direkteur is. Rich Rewards Trading, is dit, erken u die maatskappy?
Ja,
I do know that company.
Het u dit aan u behoort?
dis korrek.
Was it my company? Yes, it was.
People's Empowerment Forum, het dit aan u behoort?
Ja, dis korrek.
Yes, it's correct.
U was die direkteur daar.
Dis korrek.
I was a director there.
In Excess Trading 18,
Access Trading 18.
Naam kom so vaag by eerlik, kan dit nie presies onthou nie.
Yeah, I cannot remember where was I once a director of that company, but it sounds that I was once one.
Suta Transport Services,
Ja, eerlik.
Yes,
Ubunyi Investments,
Kom weer eerlik.
Ubunyi Investments.
investment.
Nee, kan dit nie onthou nie.
I cannot remember.
Wat van Ubunyi Oil?
Kan dit nie onthou nie.
I cannot remember.
Die posisie by South African Bus and Taxi Association by SABC, was hy direkteur daar?
Ja, ek was op een stadium
Yes,
stigterslid van die organisasie.
yes, I was once in that organization.
Hy amper 2 dosyn voertuie wat aan u behoort, nie waar nie?
Ja, eerlik.
Yes, it is indeed so.
En 'n groot aantal daarvan is taksies, nie waar nie?
Dis so
I'm
eerlik.
not sure where my learned friend is going with this. There might be some method in where he's going, but the asset list of the witness, I can't see what the relevance thereof is.
we all don't know. As I said to him earlier, we don't have his affidavit here, so I'm unable to say he's off the mark because I don't know whether there's a link between these companies and his activities at the security branch. It will be cleared up. Dr. Pretorius?
My Lord, it's just a question as to that this guy, notwithstanding the fact that he's 80 years old, that he's quite involved and he can still handle himself on any question. That's the only relevance.
Oh, I see.
And I'm more or less finished with that line of questioning in any case, my Lord. Meneer, ek wil by u weet of u geweet het dat 'n groot vis gevang is toe Ahmed Timol gearresteer is.
Die oorlede Timol se geskiedenis ken ek glad en geheel nie, U Edele.
You know that the big fish was caught, but I do not know any information regarding Timol.
Hy het seker uitgevind, na hy daai naweek, die Vrydag aand gearresteer is, het seker uitgevind, dat daar 'n groot deurbraak gekry is en dat 'n groot persoon gearresteer is.
Dit is wat gesê was, U Edele.
That is what was said.
En u wat intelligensie of informasie bedryf het, ek stel dit aan u dat hulle na u toe sou gekom het om van die inligting te kom verifieer.
I'm putting it to you that they could have came to you to come and verify some of the information.
Nee, U Edele.
No?
Jy sien, u het ook getuienis gegee, dit het niks met my te doen nie, u is op na u kantoor toe, en dit het u nie geraak wat daaronder gebeur het met die persoon wat uit die venster uit gespring het. Is dit korrek so?
Edele, hy antwoord is 100%, is meer as 100% korrek.
That answer is more than 100% correct.
My gestel is so ingestel, U Edele, dat ek nie sommer na dooie lyke kyk nie, veral die lyke wat uit 'n venster uit geval het, U Edele.
My belief is that I could not have gone there to go and see or look at a cop. I don't, to me, I did not have that.
Ek het dit nie nodig gehad nie, U Edele, vir propaganda doeleindes nie.
It wasn't important for me to have gone there to go and look at the cops.
Wat se propaganda doeleindes het u nou daarmee?
Natuurlik, U Edele, as ek daar gaan en ek gekyk daarso, dan het ek ook rondgeloop en gesê, ek het hom gesien daar lê, hy daar gelê, daai tyd en daai tyd.
Yeah, if that was the issue that, or the case that I could have gone there, I would have walked around and said, I've seen him lying there at that time and all that.
In alle regverdigheid wil ek net aan u stel dat dit vir my hoogs onwaarskynlik is dat u wat in beheer van 'n hele klomp nie blankes is soos wat dit destyds genoem is, dat u nie gekonsulteer sou word oor die inligting nie. Het u enige kommentaar daarop?
U Edele, as u kyk na die foto wat geneem was, minder as 'n handjievol van hierdie mense was nog steeds daar toe Timol verongeluk was. Bitter min van hierdie mense was nog betrokke by ons.
Yeah, if you look at this photo, there are few of them that were still there,
Very few
and very few
were still involved.
were still involved in that situation.
Ek wil nie te lank aanhou nie, maar hoekom gebruik u die woord toe Timol verongeluk was? Hoekom gebruik u daai keuse, verongeluk was?
Ek weet nie wat 'n ander terme om te gebruik nie, U Edele.
I don't know what other term am I supposed to use.
Ek wil dit ook net aan jou stel, vir 'n persoon wat by die veiligheidsstaf gewerk het, sou u wel te kennis gedra het van aanrandings, en sou u meer bewus gewees het van aanrandings, alhoewel u self nie noodwendig daarbey betrokke was nie. Ek stel dit in alle regverdigheid aan.
U Edele, as ek nuuskierig was, dat ek seker baie meer uitgevind, U Edele.
Yeah, if I was interested, I would have known more than what the state is putting to me.
Dit beëindig my ondervraging. Dankie, Edele.
Yes.
check whether you were involved in running a business at the time that you were a security branch officer. You were in a taxi service in Alderaan Park when you were a security branch officer.
Daai tyd het u 'n taxibedryf gehad toe u nou by die veiligheidsstaat gewerk het.
Ja, ek het al lank hierdie bedryvigheid.
Yeah, I've been I was involved in the taxi industry for quite a period of time.
When did you start working in the taxi industry?
Wanneer het u nou begin by die taxi bedryf?
Wanneer het ek begin?
Ja.
I can't remember.
Ek kan dit nie onthou nie.
But it was while you were working at John Vorster Square.
Pardon?
As dit toe u nou by John Vorster Square nog steeds gewerk het. Toe u nou betrokke geraak het in hierdie taxi bedryf.
Ja, op een stadium.
Ja, at one stage.
Was this with the knowledge of the security branch? Did they know you were working in the taxi industry?
Die veiligheidsstaat het hulle geweet dat u hierdie taxi bedryf
Ja, eerlik.
betrokke is. Yes.
And they weren't concerned about that? The fact that you had another job?
Yeah, at one stage I was asked to resign from the industry.
Op 'n sekere tyd was ek gevra om te bedank van die
And why was that?
Wanneer was dit gewees? Watter jaar is dit?
I don't know why that happened.
Ek weet nie hoekom dit gebeur het.
Did you ever use your work in the taxi industry in order to assist you to monitor potential suspects?
Verstaan u die vraag?
Eerlik baie van hierdie stryks wat daar gewees het ons genullify eerlik, omdat ons betrokke was by die huurmotorbedryf.
Yeah, because there was a lot of strikes, we were nullified in this taxi industry.
Can you recall whether you were present at John Vorster Square on the 22nd of October 1971? That's Friday the 22nd of October.
En u onthou dat u by die John Vorster Square gewees het op die 22ste van die 10de maand 1971.
Ek is nie seker van die datum nie eerlik.
I'm not sure of the date.
Okay. Well, just to remind you, it was that night that Mr. Timol was arrested.
Dit is nou die aand waar Timol gearresteer was.
Ja, eerlik, ek weet nie, dit word nou gesinspeel asof ek betrokke was by die arrestasie van Timol. Dit is glad en geheel nie so nie.
It looks like I was part and parcel of the arrest of Mr. Timol. And I wasn't there when Mr. Timol was arrested.
Yes, that's not my question. The question was only whether you were present at John Vorster Square on Friday the 22nd of October. That's all I asked.
Ja, die vraag is, was u by die gebou van die John Vorster Square op die 22ste van die 10de maand 1971?
Eerlik, meneer Timol se arrestasie het eers tot my aande gekom nadat hy gearresteer was. Nie dieselfde dag nie, maar nadat hy gearresteer was. Hoe lank nadat hy gearresteer was, kan ek nie sê nie eerlik.
Yeah, I cannot say as to whether how long was he arrested, but it came to me after he was arrested.
Mr. Sons, that wasn't my question, but I'll move on.
Dit was nie my vraag nie, maar ek sal voortgaan.
Were you present at John Vorster Square, if you can recall, over that weekend, the weekend of the 23rd and the 24th of October 1971. In other words, the Saturday and Sunday.
Kan u nou onthou of u teenwoordig gewees het daar by die John Foster Square met hierdie datums die 23ste, die 24ste van die 10de maand 1971?
Nee, edele, ek weet nie wat, ek dra nie kennis van dit nie.
I do not have any information in relation to the question coming from council.
But I glean from your evidence in chief that you probably were present, you were at work on Monday through to Wednesday, that's the 25th to the 27th of October, because you were doing some work during those days.
Die 25ste en die 27ste.
Ja, edele, ek werk gewoonlik kantoorure. Dit is van maandag af. I wouldn't have worked on a Saturday if it wasn't my duty week.
Okay. I would not have worked on a Saturday if it was not my duty.
And what were your typical or normal working hours in the week?
Pardon?
What were your office hours during the week, Monday to Friday?
Wat was u se ure?
Ja, my kantoorure was gewoonlik van maandag byvoorbeeld edele, van 7:30 af tot 4:00 die middag toe.
My office hours were from 7:30 tot 4:00.
To 4 o'clock.
To 4 o'clock.
Mr. Sons, at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, you were the most senior officer of colour, the most senior non-white officer working at John Foster Square in 1971.
Op daardie stadium was u nou een van die groot koppe gedurende die jaar 71.
Kan u net asseblief daai vraag herhaal, want ek verstaan dit nie edele.
Were you the most senior non-white officer in John Foster Square in 1971?
Was u nou was senior weer daar op die dag op die jaar van 71?
Ja, ek het net my senioriteit bereik, u edele.
Ja, bereik.
Bereik.
Wat is bereik weer?
I just became senior officer during that
I
time.
just became a senior on that year.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Was there another, perhaps Indian or coloured or black security branch officer who had a higher rank than you at John Foster Square at that time?
Was daar nog een politiebeambte wat senioriteit
Wat 'n hoër rang gehad is wat ek het.
'n hoër rang as u?
Edele, as u kyk na die foto, die man aan my regterkant in Patlele het eers offisier geword. Dit is 'n luitenant geword voor ek luitenant geword het, u edele.
Patlele was the one that started to become an officer. He was a lieutenant by then.
So in 1971, you were the second highest non-white officer at John Foster Square.
Dis korrek, u edele.
Okay, that's correct.
So would I be correct in saying that you were one of the more trusted non-white officers at that time?
U was een van die vertroubare offisiere.
Ek sal nie sê die mees betroubare persoon nie, edele. Want daar soms dinge gebeure wat jy in twyfel trek.
Die vraag is, was u een van hulle? Een van die offisiere wat dit ook
Ja, maar edele, dit moet nie so gestel word as ek spesifiek die persoon was wat almal aankom, die deur sou geklop het nie, edele.
Yeah, it shouldn't be put to me as if they came specifically to knock on my door.
Mr. Sons, let's move on to the next question, and I want to return to Mr. Surendra Babu. Now, my colleague, Mr. Pretorius, has already asked you certain questions in relation to Mr. Babu, who I think you sometimes refer to as Baby. Was his nickname Baby?
Yeah,
Baby? Yes.
baby.
Yes. Can you recall when Baby joined you at John Vorster Square?
Nee, julle.
I cannot remember.
Ek kan nie onthou nie.
I can't remember as to when Baby joined me at the John Vorster Square.
At the time of the Timol incident, that was October of 1971, was Baby present?
Ek weet nie, julle.
I wouldn't know whether Baby was present in October 1971.
Did you ever share an office with Baby on the 9th floor?
Julle, ek het 'n kantoor op my eie gehad. As Baby beweer dat hy saam met my 'n kantoor gedeel het, dan was dit miskien net vir 'n stoel of twee. Net daai opdrag, wat ook al dit is, en dan weer weg. Maar nie dat hy permanent by my was nie.
Yeah, if that is what Baby said, that we shared an office, it was just for one or two chairs, and if there is an instruction, and he would go where he was supposed to go, because I did not share an office with him.
And what kind of instruction do you think Baby might have been acting under?
Dit hang af, edele, wat benodig was.
It depends on what is that it was needed.
But was he used for purposes of monitoring or surveillance? What kind of work do you recall he was doing?
Edele, kan die dinges net bietjie duideliker praat. Ek kan nie hoor wat hy sê nie. Ek sukkel om te hoor.
What kind of work was Baby doing? Did it involve monitoring or surveillance of activists?
Ja, wat is soort werk het hy bevat? Wat is soort werk het hy gedoen?
Dit hang af normaalweg wat het soort werk daar beskikbaar was, edele.
It depends on what type of work he was involved in.
As er byvoorbeeld 'n aseer geval is of 'n kleerling geval, dan sou ek vir Babu ingespan het om dit te doen.
Yeah, well, if there's a colored or whatever other native, I would also ask him or put him into that team.
And just to be as clear as possible, you say you can't remember when Baby was with you at John Vorster Square. Are you excluding the possibility altogether that he was present around the time of the Timol incident? Or are you saying maybe he was there, but you can't remember?
I can't remember, ek kan nie onthou nie, edele.
I can't remember.
Were you present in any room when Mr. Timol was being questioned?
Was hy teenwoordig toe hulle nou vir die oorledene Ahmed Timol ondergevra het?
Ek het die oorledene nie onder oë gesien nie, edele. Ek het nooit vir Timol gesien eers nie.
I did not see him even with my eyes. I did not see him, not at all.
You've explained to us that you were present on a visit to the Timol home on the afternoon of the 27th of October. Did you go at any other time to the Timol home, before or after that visit?
Nee, edele.
No.
I just want to put it to you that there were certain other visits, and I want to ask you whether you were aware that they happened. Are you aware of a visit to the Timol home on Saturday, 23rd of October, very early that morning?
Stel u die vraag.
Ek kan dit nie onthou nie, Eerder.
I cannot, I cannot remember that.
And did you hear of another visit to the Timol home on Tuesday, the 26th of October, at about 8:30 in the evening?
En u onthou dat daar was 'n
Nee, Eerder.
nou,
Do you know a warrant officer, Johannes Liebenberg?
Liebenberg,
Yes.
the name sounds familiar.
Detective Sergeant van Rensburg?
Van Rensburg. I can't remember that, Mr.
I cannot remember that surname.
And a Lieutenant Martinus Ras, R-A-S, Ras.
Wie is dit, Eerder?
Lieutenant Ras,
Rask.
R-A-S, Ras.
Huh?
Ras,
Rask.
Ras, R-A-S.
Nee.
No,
Because there is evidence before the first inquest that those three individuals were involved in the earlier visits to the Timol house. Now, you've testified that during your visit to the house, a typewriter was seized. Is that correct?
Ek sinspeel dat dit so is, Eerder.
yeah, there was a typewriter taken.
Because Liebenberg and LaRue, in their statements to the first inquest, they say they seized a typewriter from the Timol house on Saturday the 23rd, very early that morning.
Dit kan so wees, Eerder.
It's possible.
In which case it would be two typewriters that were taken from
Ek kan nie
the
sê
house.
nie.
I can't say whether were they two typewriters.
Following the death of Mr. Timol, did you have any discussions with Baby about what happened to Mr. Timol?
Ek kon nie enigiets met Baby bespreek het nie, Eerlagbare, want ek weet myself nie wat het gebeur het nie.
I would not have spoken to Baby because I did not know what happened.
Mr. Sant, in 1971, do you recall how you were paid? Were you paid by way of check, or were you given an envelope with cash for your monthly salary?
Kan u dit onthou? Dat would be
Das ek betaal deur check, Eerland.
of contact.
Ek het altyd my geld deur die dinges gekry.
Jury, but
What do you mean by dingus?
Deur die gewone stelsel.
by the usual system.
And what is the usual system?
Pardon?
Wat is die gewone stelsel?
Gewone stelsel is dat geld gedeponeer word in jou rekening in.
A usual system it is when your money is being deposited into your bank account.
And was that the case in 1971?
Dit was altyd so.
It was all the time like that.
Ek kan nie onthou dat dit enigstens gewissel was nie, Edele.
I cannot remember if there was any change.
Were you at any point paid by way of check, which you had to then go cash at the bank?
Pardon?
Were you never paid by check?
Het hulle nooit vir u sy salaris met 'n cheque betaal nie.
Ek sal dit glo as ek dit sien, Edele.
I would only believe that if I can see it.
And in your earlier days when you were a young policeman, were you not paid by cash in an envelope?
Nee, glad en geel nie, Edele.
No.
Mr. Sons, please listen to this question carefully.
U moet nou mooi luister na die vraag, né?
Have you ever in your policing career witnessed an assault by a policeman on a detainee?
Ja, die vraag is, het u al vanaf u nou politiebeampte gewees gesien het dat 'n politiebeampte brand aan of aangehoude mense word aangerand deur 'n politiebeampte?
Ja, in die celle sien jy dit gewoonlik, eerlik.
In die celle. In die celle, minister.
In the cells.
Yeah. In the cells, yeah, you see that happening.
So you yourself have witnessed assaults in the cells?
Nee, eerlik.
No.
So let me ask the question again. Have you personally seen, observed, an assault on a detainee?
Nie wat ek van weet nie, eerlik.
Eerder ek het 'n magspoel, kan ek gou op toilet toe gaan asseblief.
Ek toilet toe.
Okay.
I think you have an effect on our interpreter.
I was hoping to have an effect on the witness, but as long as it's working. I think the witness speaks better English and Afrikaans than the interpreter.
Niet de mol, bro.
Niet klaar.
Ja, het is zo uitgegaan.
Is het?
Ja,
Dat is jammer.
dit is net zo eerlijk.
Oh ja, ek weet nie wanneer gaan die man klaar raak.
Hij is nog zo gereikt.
He's back, Anthony.
Ja, dank je. Dank je. Dit was fijn geweest. Dank je iedereen.
As the court pleases. Mr. Interpreter, everything is under control?
Ja, dank je. En very much under control.
Wonderful. Mr. Sons, you said, in response to my question as to whether you had witnessed assaults, you said it usually happens in the cells. Can you explain to the court what you mean by usually happens in the cells?
Eerlijk, dit is in gevalle waar daar wangedrag is, volgens die policeman se zienswijze. Als hij bijvoorbeeld sy seksie vra hulle te bad en hulle weier of iets van die aard. Verder as dit kan ek nie beter antwoord nie, eerlijk.
Yeah, when there's misconduct that they need to, as correction, misconduct, and they are charged with misconduct, That would have happened, yes. Je moet me sê as ek nie reg tog.
Dis reg.
And again, Mr. Sons, I want you to listen very carefully to the next question. As a policeman, throughout your career, have you, Mr. Sons, you personally, have you been involved in any assault or any abuse of any detainee at any time?
Nee, eerlik.
Gedurende u loopbaan in die polisie, dat u iemand miskien aangerand of wat.
Are you certain about that?
Nou, dat is jy seker daarvan.
Miskien het my brein geroes soos my ouderdom, eerlik.
Are you saying that,
Because of my age.
are you saying your memory might be a bit rusty?
Pardon?
Your memory might be a bit shaky.
Yeah, it could be.
Yes.
Could be.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can help you with your memory. Do you know a security branch officer by the name of Mr. Billings?
Wie is dit eerlik?
Billings. B-I-L-L-I-N-G-S.
Wat omtrent hom eerlik?
He was a colored security branch officer who worked with you.
Dis korrek, eerlik.
That is correct. There was a color that worked with me.
And how did he get to work with you? What work did he do with you?
Same work that I did. Dieselfde werk wat ek gedoen het, eerlik. Dit is ondersoek, inligting, naspeur en so aan, eerlik.
The same job that I was doing.
And did that work involve the arrest and questioning of suspects? Did that work include the arrest and questioning of suspects?
Die werk wat julle saam gemaak het met
Ja, eerlik.
Yes.
And did you work with Mr. Harry Persad?
Harry Persad.
Persad.
Dis korrek, eerlik.
Yes, I did work with him.
And was he also involved in the arrest and interrogation of detainees with you?
Dis korrek, eerlik.
That is correct.
And Mr. Smith? Smith, a white security branch officer.
Hy was 'n blanke man. Het u vir hom geken?
A white man.
Smith,
Ja,
yes.
Smith, blanke.
Can't remember.
I can't remember.
I want to return to a name that was put to you by Mr. Pretorius, Hanif Valley. I'm going to spell that, H-A-N-I-F, first name, and V-A-L-L-Y, surname, Hanif Valley. You testified earlier that you couldn't recall this particular name. Do you still...
I can't remember the name, but it rings a bell.
So do you recall that Mr. Billings and Mr. Harry Persad arrested Mr. Valley in 1980?
Ek kan dit nie onthou nie, eerlik.
I can remember that.
We will be putting up an affidavit from Mr. Valley, and he will say that you actually searched his house, and following the search, you took him back to John Foster Square.
There's a directe verklaring.
Ek kan nie onthou nie, eerlik.
I cannot remember that.
And on arrival at John Foster Square, when you began to question him, you took away his spectacles, his glasses.
Sy brille. U het sy brille
Ja,
gevat.
ek hoor eerlik. Ek kan nie onthou nie.
I can't remember that.
Mr. Valley will say that while in that interrogation room with you and your colleagues, he was forced to stand naked.
Kaal. Jy het hom forceer om kaal te staan.
Kan nie onthou nie, eerlik.
I cannot remember that.
Did you ever require anybody to stand naked during interrogation?
Nie wat ek kan onthou nie, eerlik.
Not that I can remember.
Mr. Valley says that thereafter he was assaulted by way of being slapped and kicked.
Die antwoord is weer eens, ek kan nie onthou nie.
I cannot remember.
Does the name Alwyn Musson, M-U-S-S-O-N, does that ring a bell?
Nee, Edele.
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Because Mr. Alwyn Musson will be giving us an affidavit in which he will say that on the morning of June 1983, Mr. Harry Persat came to his home in Bosmont and arrested him.
Ek kan nie die voorval onthou nie, Edele.
He will say that he was active in a group called Action Youth. Do you remember that organization? Action Youth?
Edele, dit is 'n organisasie van jare terug. Ek kan nie weer daai organisasie ook onthou nie.
It's an organization that was there years back, I cannot recall.
Yes. It was an organization active in the colored and Indian areas, mobilizing the youth. But Mr. Masson will say further that you were in the car when he got into that vehicle and was taken to John Vorster Square.
Ek kan dit nie onthou nie, Edele.
I cannot remember that.
And he will say that he was questioned by you and your colleagues on the 10th floor, and that before you left, you assaulted him by using an open hand and hitting him on his head twice.
Ek kan dit nie onthou nie, Edele.
I cannot remember that.
And he will say that at the time of that assault, you said to Mr. Alwyn Masson that you needed more information, and you then left the room.
Hy het vir hom gesê dat hy soek meer inligting.
Ek kan ook nie die organisasie onthou nie, Edele.
I can't even remember the organization.
In your evidence in chief, you said you worked under the direction of Warrant Officer Durker. Was he your immediate supervisor?
Ja, dit hang af wat ondersoek was, Edele.
Yeah, it depends as to what
What was being investigated.
investigated.
So from time to time, he would use you to help with his investigations.
Dit is correct, Edele.
That is correct.
So we've heard evidence before this court that Warrant Officer Durker was the security branch officer who was tasked with investigating the so-called bucket bombs, the distribution of illegal leaflets or pamphlets produced by the South African Communist Party and other prohibited organizations. Do you recall that he was the officer looking into those bucket bomb campaigns?
Nee, ek kan nie sê Durker het dit ondersoek nie, Edele, maar ek weet Durker het 'n baie groot rol gespeel in die ondersoek van meeste van die sake, Edele.
Yeah, I cannot say precisely as to whether he was responsible for that, but I know that he played a role with the investigations of such organizations.
Do you recall those bucket bombs going off? I mean, you were in Johannesburg in 1970 and 1971. Do you remember that these bucket bombs were being detonated in Johannesburg and Cape Town and Durban?
Nee, ek kan nie onthou nie.
I cannot remember.
Because we've heard evidence that some of those bucket bombs were in fact detonated quite close to John Vorster Square, for example, in Diagonal Street.
Ek kan nie onthou nie, Edele.
I cannot remember.
And in fact, just in August of 1971, bucket bombs went off simultaneously in every big city in South Africa. You have no recollection of that?
Edele, ek wonder net of ek nie op kursus was gedurende die tydperk wat nou genoem word nie.
I'm wondering if I was not on course during that period of time.
But following the arrest of Mr. Timol, did you have occasion to talk to Mr. Durka at all?
Did I ever?
Did you speak with Mr. Durka, Warrant Officer Durka?
Met wie?
Met Dirk het u al met nou Dirk gepraat.
Het ek met Dirker gepraat?
Ja.
I haven't seen him since I think it's 1993, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm talking about the days following Mr. Timol's arrest.
Die dae wanneer hulle nou vir meneer Timol nou.
On the 9th floor.
Edele, ek dink as ons mooi gevolg het wat ek gesê het, daar was bitter min vertroue in die nie blankes geplaas. So dit is, jy kry nie sommer 'n geval waar jy saam met een van die blankes aan gesels omtrent die ondersoeke van sake nie.
Yeah, because as I've already testified that as we were known as non-whites, you wouldn't be given those type of investigations to investigate. Is that right?
Did you ever come across a Detective Sergeant Gerhardus van Tonder?
Van Tonder.
Gerhardus van Tonder.
Die van Tonder klink bekend, u edele.
Yeah, the same name, Gerhardus van Tonder.
Did you do any work with him?
Ja, u edele, as dit dieselfde persoon is.
Yeah, if it is the same person, I did work with him.
Was this the van Tonder that focused quite a lot on the Indian and coloured cases?
Dit kan so wees, u edele.
That can be so.
And is that why you did some work with him on the Indian and coloured cases?
That's why what?
Is that why you worked with
Indian
Detective
nog
van Tonder?
Met Gerhardus van Tonder.
Wel, nie spesifiek nie, u edele.
Not
Dit sal van tyd tot tyd geruil word.
It would,
Waar jy benodig word, daar sal jy geplaas word, sodat jy die ondersoek kan voortstuur.
it would be from time to time and you'd be placed there if it is necessary.
Mr. Sons, if I recall correctly, you said you heard, following the arrest of Mr. Timol, that he was a big fish. Is that correct?
Ek het gehoor, hier in die hof in, word dit verwys na die groot vis.
I only heard that here in court that he was regarded as a big fish.
So you never heard while you were in John Vorster Square that he was an important detainee? The police were very happy to catch him.
I said in here.
Ja.
No, my lord.
Was it commonplace for important detainees to sleep in the offices rather than the cells? Did you hear of that practice?
Die edele, sover ek weet, na die ondervraging van die ondervraagdes word hulle na die selle toe geneem, waar hulle dan daar sal oornag.
Yeah, after the investigation, then they would be taken to the cells where they would sleep.
Did you ever see in one of these offices perhaps a mattress or some blankets where a detainee might sleep?
Nee, edele.
No.
Would it be surprising to hear that Mr. Timol, who was regarded as a big fish, was left alone, was guarded by a pay clerk?
Edele, soos ek gesê het, ek het nie eens vir Timol geken nie, ek het hom nie gesien nie. Tot vandag toe ken ek hom nie, ek sien hom maar net in die koerant, ek sien net die gesig in die koerant.
Yes, as much as I've already said that, I did not know him, and I only see him in the newspapers.
Yes, that's not my question. Please listen carefully. The question is, let me rephrase it, would it have been proper or acceptable for a security detainee to be guarded alone by a pay clerk?
Word hy alleen opgepas?
Ja,
Is dit die vraag?
Yes.
deur 'n klerk.
Ja, dit is natuurlijk so, jy moet baie versigtig wees.
Yeah, it's naturally like that, then you must be very much away.
Ekskuus eerlik. Wie ook al toegesê word om die persoon op te pas.
Maar wat was die beleid?
Ekskuus
Wat
eerlik.
was die beleid daar? Wat was die praktyk? Was dit toegelaat dat
Die praktyk is dat jy los nie die man alleen nie.
Yeah, the practice was
Jy
that.
moet hom nie alleen los nie.
The practice was that you don't leave him alone. You can't leave him alone.
The evidence before this inquest and also the first inquest is that he was left alone, not with a security branch officer, not with a specially trained guard, but with an administrative clerk who happened to be dropping off salary payments. In your view, would that be improper or would it be irregular?
Dit sou nie toegelaat was nie eerlik.
That could not have been allowed.
I think the translation is it couldn't have been allowed.
Yeah, it's an issue that is so need to gelaat word. Is it so?
Mr. Sons, my colleague Mr. Pretorius has asked you whether you have heard of or are familiar with certain kinds of assault and torture that were perpetrated. There's evidence that these acts of torture were perpetrated against detainees at John Vorster Square. I want to put to you a few other methods of torture. And I'll tell you up front that all these methods that I'll be putting to you, detainees have alleged, detainees who were detained around the same time as Mr. Timol, have alleged that they suffered such torture at John Vorster Square between the 23rd and the 27th of October. And as I put these to you, you tell me whether you've heard of such torture. Detainees being punched, kicked, or slapped.
Nee eerlik.
No.
Standing on detainees' toes.
Nee eerlik.
No.
Dragging or pulling a detainee by the hair.
Nee eerlik.
No, my love.
Threatening a detainee with death or more torture.
Nee eerlik.
No, my love.
Placing a hessian or plastic bag over a detainee's head in order to suffocate that person.
Nee eerlik.
No.
Applying of electric shocks.
Nee eerlik.
No.
The giving of mule kicks. A mule kick, M-U-L-E.
Nee eerlik.
No, my love.
Do you know what a mule kick is?
Kicking backwards.
Kicking backwards. Well, there's evidence before this court that detainees were kicked from the upper part of their legs repeatedly. It was known as mule kicks. Dangling a detainee by the ankles over the
Nee
stairwell.
eerlik.
No. Hello?
Have you ever heard of a detainee slipping into unconsciousness?
Nee eerlik.
No.
Urinating on a detainee?
Pardon?
Urinating on a detainee.
Nee eerlik. Beslis nie.
No.
Making a detainee stand on one leg with an arm raised high.
Nee eerlik.
No.
Forcing a detainee to do half squats with hands raised high.
Nee eerlik.
No.
Forcing a detainee to sit on an imaginary chair.
Nee, Edele.
No.
Forcing a detainee to stand on a sheet of A4 paper for a prolonged period.
Nee, Edele.
No.
Depriving a detainee of food and water.
Beslis nie toegelaat nie, Edele.
That was not allowed.
Not allowing a detainee to go to the bathroom and forcing that detainee to urinate on oneself.
Nee, Edele.
No.
Mr. Sons, there's evidence before this court that following the arrest of Mr. Timol, a large number of other individuals, other suspects were rounded up. And you've heard from Mr. Pretorius that there were some 22 suspects who were arrested in the days following Mr. Timol's apprehension. There's also evidence before this court that one of the detainees, Professor Naik, was interrogated around the clock. And the evidence is that some 17 interrogators questioned Mr. Naik in the days that followed Mr. Timol's arrest. Did you not see additional traffic in John Vorster Square, particularly on the 9th floor at that time? And I'm talking about from Monday the 25th and the days that followed?
Kan ek net weer daai vraag hoor, Edele?
Yes. On the Monday, you remember that Mr. Timol was arrested on the Friday night. Now on the Monday, particularly Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, while you were at work, did you not see more people at work than usual, particularly individuals from other offices of the security branch, like the Pretoria head office?
Nee, Edele.
No.
Now, Mr. Pretorius has asked you whether you know certain individuals who interrogated Mr. Timol. I want to put a few more names to you. Have you come across a Sergeant Leonard Klein? He's not a security branch officer, he was based at Newlands Police Station.
Kan ek net weer die vraag hoor?
Do you know Sergeant Leonard Klein? K-L-E-Y-N.
Nee, Edele.
No. No.
Did you come across a Lieutenant Colonel Willem van Wyk? He was from the Pretoria head office.
Nee, kan nie onthou nie, Edele.
I cannot remember that.
Do you know Captain Richard Bean?
Bean. Die van klink bekend, Edele.
Yeah,
Maar ek kan net nie die gesig daarbey pas nie.
that surname sounds known.
Yes. There is evidence that he had an office on the 9th floor.
Dis moontlik, Edele.
It's possible.
And did you ever come across a Sergeant Jacob Lowe?
Ek kan nie onthou nie.
I cannot recall that.
Were you ever shown the documents, or did you ever come to see the documents that the SACP were distributing through the bucket bombs and also through the post?
Edele, ek het nog nooit daai dokumente eers gesien nie.
I did not even see those documents.
Mr. Sons, just a few more questions arising from your evidence in chief. According to your personal file, you were promoted to a junk officer, I assume that's warrant officer, in 1968.
Ekskuus, laat ek net die vraag mooi hoor, Edele.
Were you promoted to warrant officer in 1968, a junk officer?
In the year 68.
Daar was nie so 'n rang destyds nie, edele.
There wasn't such a rank. The rank.
Adjutant officer. Yes, adjutant officer.
Adjutant officer.
Warrant officer.
Warrant officer.
You say 1968.
Yes. We're just going to check your personal file because you've testified that you were a lieutenant in 1971. Your personal file seems to suggest that you were in fact. Thanks. I've been given your personal file. And perhaps for the sake of completeness, this is a better copy. You started off as a constable in 1958. In 1964, you were promoted to sergeant. In 1968, you were promoted to warrant officer. It says in 1970 sergeant, although that seems back to front. Although there's another list which says you were promoted to sergeant in 1964, but that we don't have to resolve here. According to your personal file, you were only promoted to lieutenant in 1973. Do you confirm what I'm telling you from your personal file?
As my geheue my nie in die steek inlaat nie, edele, was ek bevorder na offisier toe in die 71 jare.
Well, and just to complete the story, in 1978 you were promoted to captain, in 1987 to major, and 1989 to lieutenant colonel. You've indicated where your office was. You said that it was on the 9th floor, and this is of the northern wing of that part of John Vorster Square. Would I be correct in saying that your office was in what was known as the non-European section of the 9th floor? It was the section of offices close to the lifts was reserved for non-Europeans, is that correct?
Edele, tussen my kantoor en die huisbakke was daar nog 'n kantoor, 'n groterige kantoor. En dan my kantoor. En dit was aan die suidekant van die gang. Wat van die huisbakke af beweeg na die bevelvoerder se kantore toe.
In your testimony, in relation to your return trip to John Vorster Square on the 27th of October 71, when you came back from visiting the Timol house, you testified that you approached the building from a westerly direction. So that means you didn't drive down Commissioner Street or Main Reef Road. Is that correct?
No, I didn't.
No, not near.
But you did approach the building by coming underneath the double-decker highway.
I approached the building, edele, van die noorde kant af. Onder die, en dan langs in die gang van die dinges,
When I drove
van die huisbakke.
underneath the highway on 10, van watter rigting na iets was het ry links.
Links
Yeah.
to the eastern side.
And then I turned left to the eastern side.
And when you came under the double-decker highway, what road did you use to access the building? Can you remember the name of the street?
I think it's Main Road.
Main Reef Road?
Main Road, not Main Reef Road.
Is that a different
Main
road to
Reef
Main
Road
Reef?
is the other side.
Is that
That's
the other
Main
side of the
Road.
building? Is Main Road on the other side of John Foster Square to Main Reef Road?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, after the arrest of Mr. Timol on the 22nd of October, were you asked by anybody, any superior officer, to do some research or do some background checks on any Indian or coloured persons who had been detained?
Navorsing.
Kan jy net daai vraag weer herhaal asseblief?
Yes. After the 22nd of October, you recall Mr. Timol was arrested on the night of the 22nd, Friday the 22nd. In the days that followed, were you asked to do any research, perhaps in some files, or perhaps asked to go somewhere to do some background checks on any Indian or coloured persons who had been apprehended?
Ek kan dit nie onthou nie, eerlik.
I cannot remember that.
But that's the kind of work that you might have been asked to do at that time.
Ja,
Yes.
In response to a question Mr. Pretorius put to you, whether you had heard of any assaults or abuse, you said to him that from time to time there was talk that detainees had been assaulted. Can you advise the court, who was this talk amongst? Who was involved in talking about assaults?
eerlik, as jy 'n koerant oopmaak, dan sê jy kry daar so waar daar 'n persoon aangehou was, sê jy kry daar so dit is sprake weer van aanranding.
Yeah, if you open up a newspaper, you realize that there's somewhere where they're talking about assaults.
And so this talk would be amongst your colleagues, perhaps on the floor? Or,
Nee, eerlik.
No?
so,
Dit is koerant gesê dis.
yes. But would your colleagues talk about what was in the newspapers?
Koerant nuus.
So in other words, there was no discussion between yourself and your colleagues about what was in the newspapers.
Nou,
No, yeah.
One of your tasks was also to focus on Indian and coloured cases, particularly activists who were involved politically. That's correct?
ja, eerlik.
Yes.
So did you ever come across the name of Ahmed Timol while you were doing your research and your investigations prior to his arrest?
Nee, eerlik.
No.
The photograph that Mr. Pretorius showed you, do you recall where it was taken?
Nee, eerlik.
No, I don't remember where this photograph was taken.
Do you think perhaps it was taken at the Brixton Murder and Robbery Unit?
Ek het bevestig hier eerlik dat ek weet nie waar die foto geneem was nie.
I've confirmed that I do not know where this.
Ek weet nou nog nie waar dit geneem was nie, alhoewel my gesig daarin verskyn het.
I cannot confirm as to where this photograph was taken.
Well, perhaps we need to get you a better picture, because in a better picture you can actually see the background, and it appears to be taken in front of windows with bars, in other words, the cells. And we have information to suggest that it was taken at Brixton Murder and Robbery Unit. Is that a possibility?
Daar is hy moontlikheid eerlik.
Yes, there is that possibility.
You spoke about a team of individuals. You said it was a very small team of individuals that worked with you, non-whites who worked with you. When did that team, when was that team started?
Wanneer?
Yes, wanneer, when?
Wanneer het wat gebeurde?
When did you start that small team of non-whites who worked with you at John Vorster Square?
Edele, hierdie groep wat u sien in die foto, meeste van die mense kom van ander afdelings af. Ek het byvoorbeeld hier genoem van diegene wat daar van Benoniese wêreld afkom, die Oosrand en so aan. Die mense wat saam met my gewerk het destyds, is bittermin in hierdie foto hier. Bittermin. En die groter groep wat later saam met my gewerk het, bestaan nie eens in hierdie foto nie. Hulle bestaan nie in die foto nie.
Yeah, as I've already mentioned that most of the people that I see there are no more.
Yes. That's not my question, Mr. Sons. My question is, you have testified that you had a small team that worked with you. My question is, when did you create that small team? When did it start work with you?
Dit is baie lank terug, eerlik, ek kan nie lig nie, ek weet nie.
It is quite long period of time. I cannot.
Could it have started perhaps in the late 1960s?
Wanneer het dit begin? 1960.
Dit kan miskien gebeur het om en by die voorval van Timol.
Yeah, it might have happened during the Timol issue.
If it started around the Timol issue, can I ask why it was started at that time?
Ek weet nie, dit is maar net die groot geeste wat dit goed gevind het om die groep saam te stel.
No, it's the officers or the big heads that started that type of activity.
Is it not possible that it was started then because of the information that emerged from the Timol investigation?
Dit is moontlik, edele.
It's possible.
In your time at John Vorster Square with the security branch, did you ever hear of a term called resident sweeper?
Resident sweeper. Het u al gehoor van resident sweeper?
Nee, edele.
No.
Did you ever hear of an individual by the name of Brigadier Grobler?
Ja, edele.
Yes, I did.
Hy was op een stadium was hy die bevelvoerder daar by John Vorster Plein.
At some stage, he was a commissioner there at the John Vorster Square.
There is an allegation before this court made by Mr. Paul Erasmus that Brigadier, and I believe his first name was Quartus, Brigadier Quartus Grobler, was known as the resident sweeper. Whenever there was a big problem that had to be dealt with, where the police had perhaps assaulted or tortured somebody, and they needed to cover up what the police had done, Brigadier Grobler was called in to fix that kind of problem. Do you ever hear of that?
Nee, edele, ek is verbaas dat Paul Erasmus dit gesê het. Ek wonder hoekom het hy nie die hof ook hier gesê hy wou selfmoord pleeg en dat ek sy lewe gespaar het nie.
Yeah, I'm surprised as to why he come and why did he not come and so. Hoekom het hy nie die hof dit kom sê? Why did he not come and tell the court and not tell the court that he wanted to commit suicide and I've spared his life? Is that right?
Ja.
I'm not aware of Mr. Erasmus giving such evidence, but we'll move on. Are you aware of any cover-ups that have been perpetrated by the security branch at any time while you have worked at John Vorster Square?
Toesmeer van wat, eerlijk?
In connection with any crime that the police have committed?
Ik draag geen kennis van zoiets nie, eerlijk.
No, I do not know anything of cover-ups.
Have you ever been involved of a cover-up of any particular crime?
Eerlijk, ik draag niet zo kennis.
I do not have any knowledge.
In your work, have you ever been involved of a cover-up of any particular crime?
Eerlijk, ik draag niet zo kennis.
I do not have any knowledge.
In your work, did you ever
Iemand om weer vertrouwen nie, eerlijk.
Yeah, because if there's something that he would unveil, nobody would then trust him or her.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any re-examination?
Yes, thank you. Meneer Sons, ten opsigte van Surendra Babu, het ek 'n dokument vanaf die polisie ontvang wat aandui dat sy aanstellingsdatum die 20ste Maart 1972 was. Dra u kennis daarvan of dit die datum?
Nee, ik draag niet kennis van dit nie, eerlijk.
No.
Ek het nie verder van.
Mr. Sons, there's just one aspect I want you to clarify. You testified that you did not want to see the person they were talking about when you arrived at John Vorster Square. You remember? After you heard that somebody fell through the window, you did not want to see them. But were you not curious to know who that person was?
Eerlijk, ik het niet geweet wie die persoon is wat uit die venster uitgevallen het nie.
Ja.
Het is die goddelike waarheid. Ik het niet geweet nie.
Ja.
En ik het nog minder belang gestel om te gaan kijken naar een lijk wat daar ligt. Wat van 10 vloeren afgevallen het, eerlijk, daar op die grond val. Mijn macht kan het niet vat nie. Mijn gestel kan het niet vat nie.
Dat is niet die vraag, meneer Sons. Dat is niet die vraag. Die vraag is, het u belang gesteld om uit te vinden wie die persoon was?
Eerlijk, het is uitgevind nadat ik in die kantoor was, eerlijk.
Ja, maar daar, op daardie stadium, het u niet die mensen gevraagd, maar wie is dit wat daar gevallen?
Nee, eerlijk.
Hoekom
Ik heb
nie?
niet eens gevraagd, nie, eerlijk.
Hoekom nie?
Dit is net iets in mij, eerlijk. Dit, hoe ik groot geworden het. Als je nou een lijk daar zo zien, dan moet je moet verheerlijk dat God jou die lichaam gegeven. En je kan niet net die lichaam zomaar net zo vat, nie, eerlijk.
Nee, ons praat nie van die lichaam nie. Ons praat nie van...
Ik het glad en geheel niet eens gevoel dat het mij belang is om hem nou te vragen, rond en rond te sniffelen en vragen. Wie daar geval? Hoe komt het in geval? Wie was samen met hem? Nee, eerlijk.
Hoekom nie?
Ik weet niet, eerlijk. Dit is maar net iets in mij in.
Is dit nie 'n mens se reaksie nie? As u sulke nuus hoor dat iemand het geval, dit kon een van jou kollegas gewees het.
Ja, dit kon een van hulle gewees het, u edele.
Jy
Maar-
het dit nie geken nie.
Maar weer eens het ek nie belang gestel om te rond te sniffel en te vra nie, edele.
Dit is nie sniffel en vra nie.
Soos nou
Die
die
reaksie is jy wil slegs weet wie is die persoon, dis al. Dis nie sniffel en vra nie. Wie
Nee,
is die
julle-
persoon?
Ek het nie belang gestel om te vra nie. En 'n beter antwoord as daai eerlik kan ek jou nie gee nie. Ek kan nie sê ek het gevoel ek het hierdie persoon te lief of die of dan. Nee, ek kan dit nie sê nie. Ek moet die waarheid sê en wat ek sê is die waarheid. Die waarheid is eens en vir altyd. Ek het nie belang gestel om te gaan kyk wie daar lê nie.
Is ek verkeerd as ek kan aflei dat op daardie stadium jy het kennis geken wie geval het? Dis waarom jy nie gevra het nie.
Dit is wat u edele.
Kan ek aflei en jy moet u moet vir my sê of ek korrek is. Kan ek aflei dat die rede waarom jy nie gevra het nie is dat jy het kennis gedra wie is die persoon wat geval het. Is ek korrek?
Edele, ek kon nie kennis dra van wie die persoon is nie as ek van buitekant af inkom en die nuus hoor die persoon lê daar om die draai nie.
Nee,
Ek kan nie dit hoe anders? Wat se bydrae kon ek lewer tot Timol se dood toe? Wat se bydrae? Wat sou ek daarbey gebaat het? Sou ek meer inligting gekry het? Of wat? En as die antwoord nee is, dan moet ek as onskuldig bewys word. Want ek weet nie hoekom dit so gebeur het nie, dit is nou net so gebeur, u edele. Ek is jammer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions arising out of my question?
Please, thank you, my lord.
Yes.
Interessant wat jy nou sê, so daar by die huisbakke het hulle gesê die persoon lê daar om die draai. Dit korrek.
Ek luister nou, ek luister.
Daar by die huisbak het hulle vir u gesê die persoon lê daar om die draai.
Nee, die inligting was nie dat die persoon daar om die draai lê nie.
Wat was die inligting? Wat was die inligting?
Die inligting was dat iemand uit die venster uit geval het.
Thank you, man.
Information is that somebody fell through the window.
Thank you, Mr. Sons. You are now excused.
My
Yes.
Lord, there's certain matters that we've got to finalize on the record. In regards to the exhibit C7, that is the pictures of the post-mortem. We just need to ensure that the chain evidence is being proper and that there was no tampering.
Just a minute, Mr. Interpreter. We are busy here. I hear you are talking
My
there.
apologies, my Lord.
Yes.
Just to complete that, and I ask that this exhibit be accepted as C7A. It's just so that the chain evidence is done properly. It's an affidavit by Zahira Adams Ngwepe, just to ensure that there was no tampering with the photos that was put in the photo album C7, my lord. My learned friend, Advocate Howard Varney, will put in the complete letter that has been written by Mr. R.C. McAdam to Mr. Imtiaz Kaji, and that will be Exhibit Q, my lord. Exhibit Q.
Yeah.
And if the court could just bear with me, I'm also just handing in an affidavit of Advocate McAdam. If the court could just bear with me, that will be Q1, my lord. Here it is. Thank you, my lord. It's just affidavit of Mr. McAdam to explain it, that he worked with Mr. Powell and that that information was negative. So I've given the necessary copies and I ask that that be accepted as Exhibit Q1, my lord.
Q1.
Yes, my lord. Q would be the letter that he has written to Mr. Imtiaz Kaji, and Q1 would be the affidavit of Advocate Raymond Christopher McAdam, my lord.
Okay.
Thank you, my lord.
Yes, thank you. Is that letter which is not legible in the...
My lord, we did get a better copy of that. I also got copies of that, but I think my learned friend will hand that in, my lord. But there is a better copy of that specific letter that is attached to Mr. Kaji's affidavit. I've got a copy here, my lord. It's already handed in, but there's a better copy of that, my lord. That was part of his, Mr. Kaji's affidavit, my lord, but that's a better copy that's readable.
So this is the letter that's attached to the affidavit?
That's right, my lord. So it's already handed in, but this is just a better copy.
Yes.
Thank you, my lord.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Ivani.
Lord, we have a small package of exhibits to put up. We can ask your clerk to handle that.
Are these now further affidavits?
No further affidavits.
Yeah.
Lord, the first document is actually the same as the document that Mr. Pretorius has handed up. It's a better copy of Annexure A to the Kaji affidavit.
Okay.
We have an updated exhibit list for you as of today's date.
Yes.
And then the first exhibit we're handing up today is the police file of Mr. Sund, who's just given evidence. It's marked J5.
Yes.
And Lord, the next document is the police file of Royrus Swanepoel. We've marked that J6.
Was there an affidavit by this Swanepoel?
There's
among
no,
those who testified in 1972?
There's no affidavit from Mr. Swanepoel, and he is deceased as far as we know.
Yes. So this file, what relevance is it having? Was he one of the people who interrogated Mr. Timol?
My lord, we are still investigating his role a bit further, but he might be implicated because we've put evidence of Truth Commission findings that he underwent an interrogation course in France with Captain Gloy. And furthermore, the Truth Commission held Mr. Swanepoel responsible for the death of Babla Saluji, who fell from Gray's building. I believe that was in 1963.
Okay.
There is evidence of Mr. Swanepoel interrogating Dilshad Jatam. So we thought it safe simply to hand up his file in case we wish to make reference to it. My lord, the third last document is a memorandum from the Legal Resources Centre, and this simply provides the breakdown of the IPID figures that we supplied with you previously in relation to the deaths in detention. We previously had only highlighted the deaths by suicide, that is hanging, but this document gives a detailed breakdown of those deaths. And in relation to assaults and injuries sustained through interaction with members of the force, there are 14 cases. My Lord, we will make reference to the IPID report in argument. And we have marked that document P1.
Yes, as I indicated to you, I'll be more interested in the evidence of assaults and death in detention, which was ruled to be suicide prior to that of Mr. Timol. Those that came in after would only be of interest in terms of looking at a trend, but I cannot use that evidence to make a finding about what happened to Mr. Timol. I cannot do that. You know,
Yes.
you know very well that I cannot do that.
Yes, indeed. And my Lord, in argument, we will make special reference to the cases that preceded Mr. Timol's death.
Yes, I'm interested in those, yes.
My Lord, the second last document is a letter from the Office of the National Director of Public Prosecutions. It's dated 25th February 2004. It's addressed to Mr. Imtiaz Kaji, and it's from the Deputy Head of the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit, R.C. McAdam. My Lord, Mr. Kaji in his affidavit makes reference to this letter, and in this letter, Mr. McAdam says that certain investigations produced negative results, but he requested further documents, and that is evident from the contents of this letter.
Yes.
And my Lord, finally, we presented to you a printout of a Google map. My Lord, this is a Google map which provides approximate walking and driving times from 77 Harrison Street, which we understand was the office of the District Surgeon of Johannesburg, to Johannesburg Central Police Station, which at the time was John Vorster Square. My Lord, we give this to you simply because in argument we will be raising certain questions about times provided in the police version, starting with the arrival of Mr. Rodriguez in room 1026, the arrival of Mr. X allegedly at 3:30, then the fall that took place shortly thereafter, and then the calling of Dr. Kemp, and then his arrival on the 9th floor at 16:05. And we will be suggesting to you that that timing is a little too tight, and we will be suggesting that that timing was probably unrealistic.
But the routes, have they undergone any changes then and now? Has there been any changes on them?
In terms of the actual roads?
Yes.
I don't believe so, my Lord. Harrison Street and Commissioner Street existed at that time, as did Jeppe Street. So I don't believe that the roads have changed.
Well, I'll hear you in argument, but there are other factors such as traffic and all that,
Yes, indeed.
which may play a role in terms of the time one would spend ordinarily moving from one place to another. But I will hear you in your
Yes.
argument.
And indeed, my
about-
Lord, we will be submitting that even in 71, at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, there would have been some traffic
Yes,
on the streets at the time. My Lord, we've marked that Exhibit R.
yes,
No more exhibits from our side, Your Lordship.
yes, thank you.
My Lord, may I? There was the document handed to me by the police with regard to Surendra Babu indicating his appointment date in 1972, and I think it might be of relevance to hand up this document indicating that appointment date of him, as reference has been made to him in relation to the witness songs.
Appointment into the police or
Yes.
into the special branch?
Into the police,
Oh, 1972.
1972 on the 20th of March.
So he could not have been at John Vorster Square.
Well, that is the document that was handed to me by General Groenewald, and I believe she handed it also to my colleagues
Okay, let's see.
in relation to his appointment.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. That would be Exhibit J7. I took the liberty of marking it as such.
Is it J7? Don't we have J7?
Lord, I followed on J7 as Royris Swanepoel is J6 and Mr. Sons was J5. So I believe that would be the next logic number with regard to the similar police files.
If you check with the updated table, list of exhibits, oh yeah, perhaps it would fall in there. Well, we'll accept it as J7. Is that all?
From my side, that's all. Thank you.
But Mr. Kutsi, I asked you specifically if you could provide us with an affidavit.
Yes, my Lord, I will
relating
draft the affidavit. I just didn't have time now to draft the affidavit.
No, not of this witness.
Yes.
Of Mr. Rodriguez.
Rodriguez.
Because there's a specific question that I wanted to ask him, and I said we can dispense with it by way of an affidavit.
Yes, my Lord, I have drafted the affidavit already. We were waiting to hear whether there was some further implications in relation to Mr. Rodriguez, and it will be signed. I will ensure that it is signed tomorrow morning, and then I can hand it. It just simply deals with the questions of time, and basically I have consulted with him. He just needs to sign it because I didn't want him to sign it before it's finalized, as we were waiting whether or not there will be more implications, but it can be signed immediately with him, and I can, if your lordship wishes, I will deliver it tomorrow to my colleagues per email and to yourself in person.
Yes, I'd like to receive that. I'd like to receive that affidavit because it then completes the picture.
Yes.
And but will that be all from your side?
That is all from
my side. Don't have any further witnesses?
I have no further witnesses. The one witness that we wanted to consult, and we did consult with, is unfortunately he just can't help us due to work pressure. He's currently in Canada on official business in Canada.
Okay. Mr. Vani, that's all from your side. No further witnesses.
My Lord, we have no further witnesses, but we do wish to consult with the prosecutors as to whether we should be calling Mr. Babu. I would like to confer with Mr. Pretorius before that decision is made.
Unless this is not valid, J7 is not valid. If J7 says that he was appointed in 1972, will it be really necessary to call him? Because that was the time when the inquest was already taking place.
Yes, that is so. And if in fact Mr. Babu had no previous association with the police, then that brings that matter to a close. I can tell you that we have consulted with Mr. Babu. He has provided us with another document that suggests he went on some police course in 1970. And he has given us information which he believes supports his version that he was at John Vorster Square at that time, in 1971. But I would like to confer with Mr. Pretorius and his team before we burden this court with a further witness.
My problem is I want to arrive at a stage where we say that we must now begin to argue this matter. It's difficult for me to leave this matter open-ended with the hope that some other witness might or might not come. That is the difficulty I have. I've explained that to you in chambers. I think we need to reach a point where we say, I'm not putting you in a stage where you must close your case when you're not ready to do so. But if he's going to be called, I need to be informed, because then we need to arrange the time and date to hear his evidence. So I expected that by this time, everyone would be in a position to indicate whether they are closing their case or not.
But Lord, can I suggest that when we adjourn this afternoon, that I immediately confer with my colleagues, and that we inform you this afternoon as to whether we intend to call Mr. Sons or not?
Yes.
Maybe I can, on record, it doesn't matter. I think it will just muddle the issues. I think
Yes.
I consulted fully with him, with Kali's version. I really think that calling that witness is just going to muddle the issues, and it's not needed for what's going to be done there. So I can put that on record.
That's the position of
That's
the...
the position of the NPA.
Yes. In light of that, then you will have to take a position. You will have to confer with your attorney and everybody else. You have heard what their position is. But I want to move to a point where we then talk about a date where you will argue this matter, so that I must begin to write.
My Lord, at this stage, we would still suggest that we stick to next Thursday, the 24th, as the date for arguments.
Yes.
Since we've now heard from Mr. Pretorius, and it may be we reach the same conclusion, but in the light of the very serious allegations made by Mr. Babu in relation to Mr. Timol himself and what he observed, I would want to consult with my legal team as to whether we should be calling him or not.
Yes. Yeah, but I'd like to know that. When will you be coming back to me on that one?
My Lord, we can inform you this afternoon.
Yes, I need to know that, because then it doesn't help to keep this thing open-ended. I need to know this afternoon. But then we will stand down this matter to Thursday, is it the 24th?
The 24th.
Next week. That's when I expect counsel to argue. And if possible, can I have the heads of argument ahead of time? It's going to be difficult for me to follow the arguments if I don't have the heads. I receive them on time before that date. Is it doable, Mr.
My Lord, it will be a challenge, but if we can perhaps undertake to give it to you by Wednesday afternoon?
Yes, Wednesday afternoon, even though it's too close. Unless you don't give me a Bible, you give me heads.
We will endeavour to give you
not
heads.
Argument itself, but heads.
Heads.
Then I will listen to argument, just heads. Let them be brief, to the point, then it will be easier for me to go through the 3 sets of heads. And I will get into court on Thursday knowing and being able to follow your argument.
As the court
and in
pleases.
particular the authorities that you may have there.
We shall do so, Your Lordship.
Yes, I'll appreciate it. Mr. Pretorius, is it achievable?
It's achievable.
On Wednesday afternoon? Yes. If any of counsel wants to write out the whole argument, you may do so, but I will only read the heads, because those are the points on which you want to argue, not much the argument itself. Mr. Kutsi? Yes. Yes, okay. Then Wednesday afternoon I will get the heads. I'll have to go through them overnight, and Thursday, 10 o'clock, we meet here for argument. Thursday, 10 o'clock, the 25th of August.
24th. So the 24th, my Lord.
It's the 24th, yes, 24th of August. Thursday next week, 24th of August. We adjourn.
All right.